This is Lawmakers, your source for all the news from under the Gold Dome.
Unanimous, this House is adjourned. Sine Die.
The Georgia General Assembly adjourned Sine Die last night shortly before midnight.
As is the custom, the House and Senate adjourned simultaneously to bring an end to the 2006 legislative session. Good evening, everyone. I'm Wandy Lawson.
And I'm Gerald Bryant. For the last 3 months, we've been here every day that the General Assembly has been in session to bring you all the latest from under the Gold Dome.
Tonight, we look back at the highlights and the disappointments of this year. We begin at the end. Despite predictions of an early adjournment, Sine Die came on Legislative Day 40 just minutes before midnight. Besides passage of key legislation, including the budget, lawmakers were busy saying goodbye, some for the last time. Representative David Graves went to the well to announce that he would not seek re-election in the aftermath of fallout surrounding his DUI arrest last fall.
I was in the press a lot. There's some poor decisions and some mistakes that I had made. And I just want to tell you, over a lot of soul-searching and thought, I've determined that your mistakes and your poor decisions do not define you as an individual nor as a legislator. How you respond to those is what defines you.
One-term Representative Sheila Jones, 14-year veteran Henson Mosley,
And that's Auf Wiedersehen, till we meet again.
and Robert Ray, who has spent 24 years in the House, bid the legislature farewell. Representative Chuck Scheid discussed his run for Labor Commissioner. But the greatest fanfare was reserved for House Speaker Emeritus Terry Coleman, who retires after 3 decades of serving the General Assembly.
Thank you all, members of the House, past and present, for such a great honor.
It's a little bit like a high school reunion tonight. You look around, and it's very unlikely. It's almost very sentimental in the fact that it's very unlikely that this group in one place will be the last time.
But the evening was not without contention, as the House made its final order of business, the defeat of Senate Bill 282, which would have called on the House Speaker to share the chairmanship of the Legislative Services Committee with the Senate President Pro Tem.
The effect of this bill would give the Senate more power.
Yes, sir, I think you're right on that, Mr. Chairman.
The arrogance of the other chamber to ask us to grant them more power seems a little disturbing.
On the passage of Senate Bill 282, the yeas are 0, the nays 165. This is the House of Representatives.
At about 8 minutes before 11, the House began final preparations for Sine Die.
This is unanimous. This House is adjourned. Sine Die. Yeas clearly have it. We stand adjourned. Sine Die.
After adjournment, we caught up with leaders in both the House and Senate to get their reactions to the 2006 session of the General Assembly. Many of them talked about the important legislation of the session, including education funding.
I think it was just tremendous for education. The class size reduction to 65%, the salary increase, just a good one.
You know, the creation of the counselor in the school to help prevent dropouts in school. I think those will be the things that people remember the most.
They've cut $1.2 billion out of the formula for K through 12 that have forced local systems to raise property taxes.
We tried to do more for education than has been done in the last 10 years in terms of spending on things like a new dropout program. We need to do something about the dropout rate, so I think education and kids have been a big priority.
We've funded education. We've passed the 65% rule. We have reduced class sizes, and so I think that we've got a good message.
They've cut funding to colleges, which have forced tuition hikes and has had to come out of lottery funds.
I think we went a little too far in some areas, so I was kind of disappointed in the voter ID matter.
The immigration bill, the eminent domain bill, it's just been a good session, worked hard together, have a great budget for the people of Georgia.
We did some bad things, cut $1 billion from education, gave tax breaks to big corporations of $1 billion.
I think we did the main thing when he came to do is pass a good budget for the people of Georgia.
We wasted a lot of time doing stuff like debating a divorce bill and trying to put government in people's bedrooms.
We've had a very successful year. In fact, it's odd that the Democratic caucus really brought many of the radical Republican ideas back to the center. So we've had a great session.
The legislature took up a few major issues in the final hours of the session, like the sexual predator legislation and eminent domain. However, others were handled in the first couple of weeks. David Zelski now joins us with a look back at some of the major issues that were adopted by the General Assembly this session. David.
Well, in Wandy, the voter ID bill was one of the first bills the governor signed. They also took up a measure called Amy's Law, which changes provisions when prosecuting juveniles.
House Bill 1059 is...
Senator Bill Hamrick worked on both Amy's Law and the sexual predator bill.
The main provision is a mandatory minimum 25-year sentence for crimes against children, especially sex offenses, and then for serious sexual offenders, a very strict registration and monitoring requirement. So not only do they have to register so we'll know where they are, but we can track them.
Amy's Law was partly a result from the first year of a 2-year study committee on changing Georgia's juvenile code.
In Amy's Law, we just gave a juvenile court judge more authority to hold a person who's under 13 who commits a murder for a longer time in the juvenile system to get treatment or rehabilitation. So hopefully you can turn them around at an early age.
Also passed in the final hours was Governor Perdue's eminent domain legislation.
Public use is defined for the first time in Georgia law. In the past, if a city or county or utility wanted to take your property, by definition, it was almost public use.
I think the eminent domain legislation is a lot better than what it originally started out as. I think there's still room for improvement.
However, store owner Mark Meeks of Stockbridge, Georgia, feels the bill was not strong enough to save his flower shop from being condemned in favor of a more profitable development.
I think Georgians deserve the best protection available or best protection possible. So if this is not the best protection possible, then they certainly need to work on it next year.
And finally, back in January, the House and Senate passed legislation that requires a voter ID card for registered voters who don't have a driver's license or a few other acceptable forms of ID.
I will wholeheartedly endorse and recommend whatever budgetary efforts it takes to make this in every county in the state available as soon as practical for our citizens.
The next step now for the voter ID bill is the judge's decision on its constitutionality. And the next step for many legislators is campaigning for the November elections. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm David Zelski.
While this legislative session has included the passage of many key bills, it's also seen the failure of a number of pieces of legislation. Lawmakers' Katie Eubanks has more on bills that didn't make it.
Being an election year, this session has seen many controversial pieces of legislation come before lawmakers. One of these includes Representative Calvin Hill's bill that would eliminate certain seatbelt exceptions in the current code. Representative Hill speculates as to why his bill never made it out of the Rules Committee.
But there's a lot of lawmakers, particularly the older ones in the rural counties, that believe in the old days when Speaker Murphy was here and he said that you'll never have to put a seatbelt in a pickup. And they're still afraid, this being an election year, that they may not win re-election if they vote for it, even though we had a total exemption for all the farmer and agriculture vehicles. So I guess those folks would rather see another 70 people die this year than have a few people buckle up on the seatbelt.
Another talked about bill that had no success this session was the Animal Baiting and Fighting Act that would help eliminate kitten baiting and dog-on-dog fighting. The bill passed the Senate but was stalled in the House Judiciary Non-Civil Committee.
There are a lot of people concerned about us going beyond just dog-on-dog fighting and getting into hunting areas. We tried to craft the bill to make sure we didn't have anything to do with hunting. Because I hunt myself, I don't want to stop hunting. But we really want to go after these dog-on-dog fighters. And it's in a House Judiciary Committee, and the chairman of that committee has committed to me that we will work on this bill next year and try to get something very strong to come out of that committee.
Another bill that received national attention would designate red clay as Georgia's official soil. Though favorably reported by a House committee, the bill never made it to the floor for debate. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Katie Eubanks.
As we first reported on Lawmakers, the House defeated a Senate bill last night that would have allowed building inside state-mandated stream buffers. Joining us now from the Capitol with more on that bill and other major legislation from the 2006 session is Lawmakers' Jesse Freeman. Jesse.
Well, in Wandy, the House voted down Senate Bill 510 about 7 p.m. last night. That was one of several controversial bills the legislature took up in the final days of the session. It joins the governor's Faith and Family Services constitutional amendment as Republican legislation that failed to make it through. Senate Bill 510 would have allowed building within state-mandated stream buffer zones. Environmental groups lobbied against the proposal. They say doing away with buffers would harm water quality. The bill passed the Senate but was defeated in the House.
I think at this late date, people, didn't have an understanding of the bill. The bill, if you will, had a bad number, and it had been lobbied on so much and so misunderstood that we just couldn't overcome that.
Immigration reform was another hot-button issue from the 2006 session. Senate Bill 529 codifies how the state enforces federal immigration law.
It is a comprehensive, yet moderate and a reasonable first step in what will be obviously a long road towards addressing this issue.
My feeling is the next group of people that are going to be trying to understand this are farmers, certainly the home builders, the big contractors who have to find the labor they need in order to complete their work.
That bill cleared both houses and now awaits Governor Perdue's signature.
I think it's only right that we would expect those social services to be dedicated to people who are here in a legal status.
Another controversial bill would have cleared the way for a new natural gas pipeline in Georgia. That measure, backed by House leadership, did not come up for a vote in the Senate.
In a 40-day session with limited time to deal with everything, sometimes you just have to take an issue and push it aside and take it up again later.
Another bill lost in the Senate was Governor Perdue's Hope Chest Amendment. It would have limited lottery funds to pre-K and college tuition. Another constitutional amendment that failed, but in both houses, was the faith-based funding proposal. It would have allowed faith groups to receive public money. Many Republicans say faith-based funding will be an issue on the campaign trail.
When you start talking about people out on the street and you really start talking about what we're trying to do with the Faith and Family Services, they embrace that. They want to see that. And obviously, when it comes November and time to vote, if they see a way that they can help provide that service for the state of Georgia, it probably will be an issue.
Now, one thing that all of those issues have in common is that they are probably not going away. So expect to see more legislation dealing with most of those issues next year. Reporting from the Capitol, I'm Jesse Freeman for Lawmakers.
At a press conference today, Senate President Pro Tem Eric Johnson downplayed House Senate tensions that developed during the waning days of this session. He praised the General Assembly for passing bills that address job growth, sexual predators, eminent domain, and illegal immigration. I talked with him later and began by asking what legislation will have the most direct impact on Georgians.
I think two of the governor's agenda items on education, the requiring that 65% of tax money that we spend on education goes directly to student achievement in the classroom, and the reduction in class sizes at the elementary school level. I think both of those will have long-term impact on student test scores.
A lot of people every year leave. They decide not to run again, to go into retirement. Several prominent people this year. What does the loss of that kind of institutional memory mean to the Senate?
I think it means a lot. I mean, and the people out there probably fully don't appreciate the fact that having somebody that's been here 30 or 40 years, that's been there, done that, seen it all, and can apply some wisdom. I mean, you want a turnover, you want new energy, you want new ideas, but to say that you can be here 12 years and gone, I mean, some people just hit their stride. Some people just learn the tax code. Some people just learn the health care reform issues and education. All of those are very complicated in how they're funded and how the money gets distributed out to school systems or to hospitals. Those are very complicated issues, and as you lose your senior members, and the older members also tend to be more of the statesmen and have the wisdom that the young partisans that battle it out need some of the cooler heads, just like a grandfather or grandmother does in a family. We'll miss that, and the people of Georgia will miss the older, wiser heads.
This is a citizen legislature, and unless someone's retired, virtually everyone in the General Assembly has another profession. You're a business person. Why does someone want to take on the responsibility and the hassles that go along with being in political life and helping to govern a state instead of just pursuing their personal goals?
People tell politician jokes, and everybody's crooked and all of that, but most of my constituents, and I think most of the citizen legislator constituents, appreciate. They really know what a sacrifice it is, and they say better you than me kind of comment. But so you got to have a willingness to put yourself in a glass house. You have to have a willingness to to take 3 months out of your life, work and family, to try and accomplish something. And if you're around here more than a couple of years, you find out that you can make a difference, one way or the other. You find your niche, you either work on one piece of legislation or one type of issue or health care or education, and you can make a difference. Now, how long you can do it sort of depends on your personal situation, but I think everybody up here is sincerely, regardless of their ideology or party, is sincerely trying to make education better, make the economy better, and improve health care.
It is time now for our final visit, at least of this session, with Tom Crawford, who is the national editor of CapitolImpact.com. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, Gerald. Good to be here.
Well, let's go ahead and get started with the big item as we were ticking down to Sine Die yesterday. Of course, the one constitutional item that had to be passed by the General Assembly, the budget, and it looked kind of sticky there for a while.
It didn't look good, but they finally came together in the final hours, as they always do, and passed a budget that's got a little bit for everybody: a pay raise for teachers, a pay raise for state troopers, and some money for local projects, which the legislators haven't had a chance to do for several years now. So that makes everybody a little bit happy as they go back to their districts.
Tom, of the many items that were covered this session, which one or two do you think are going to have the most impact? And let's say in a couple of areas. One, as far as publicity is concerned, and two, an actual impact on individuals.
Well, in terms of publicity, I think immigration will be the issue you hear most people talking about on the campaign trail here. It's becoming a national issue, of course, through the debate in Congress about it. The Republicans, I know, considered it very important to get an immigration bill through for this session. You'll hear a lot about that during the elections this year, and that could have a lot of actual impact on people too, Gerald. We've talked before about Georgia's agriculture industry, which is one of the state's biggest businesses. And this could have a real impact on them, possibly a negative one, if folks get either scared out of Georgia or they start cracking down on some of the people who are out there picking our crops.
Well, one of the pieces of legislation making it through last night, the sexual predator terms, and of course being called by some the toughest in the nation on potential sexual predators.
That's right. Again, another very important political issue, because it's one that really nobody can oppose. We all want to protect the children, and we all want to put the most dangerous people behind bars for as long as we can. I think the only question here is Georgia already had a very tough law on sexual offenders. You know, was it really necessary to add more years on to it? Maybe, maybe not. But again, that's another one people can talk about as they're running for re-election this year.
Tom, what about eminent domain? There was a lot of talk at the beginning of the session about the need for eminent domain legislation, yet it went down to the last minute to conference committee, and some people even saying that we wouldn't get a bill. What happened to delay it?
There were some serious doubts from folks whether there was still too much of a loophole in the bill that would allow local governments to condemn property because it was blighted. And I know there were some concerns about that, and will still be some concerns about that. But in the end, they got something through, and I think it will at least make local governments stop and think before they go in and start condemning property for economic redevelopment projects.
Well, in the 2005 session, the General Assembly passed a change to the method for establishing child support payments, kind of dividing those between both the custodial and non-custodial parent, but without any tables. And so we did see some legislation coming through on that issue.
That barely made it through. There was a lot of disputes over that one as well, especially a provision where the non-custodial parent, who's usually the father, could have his child support payments reduced if he agreed or if he spent a certain number of days taking care of the child. That did not sit well with a lot of custodial parents, who generally tend to be mothers, and the tensions between those two sides made it very difficult to get that one through, but it did go through in the final hours. There are tables now in place to calculate child support payments, and if the governor does not sign the bill, which there's been some speculation that perhaps he won't, then Georgia's basically going to be without a child support system, and that will create some interesting problems for people who are involved in divorces.
Tom, your take on the Ten Commandments legislation that ended up passing. Again, a lot of talk about this earlier in the session, but the bill that finally passed, our local governments are really going to be encouraged to display the Ten Commandments with the possibility of having to pick up the freight for any lawsuits?
Well, I think the best thing you can say about it, Gerald, is, as we jokingly say, this is a full employment bill for lawyers, because lawsuits will be filed. And, you know, local governments will have to defend their actions if they decide to take this particular route. again, if they think it's worth the money spent on defending it in court, then I guess it's a good thing for them to do. But lawsuits we will see, and there will be plenty of them.
Well, if we rewind a bit to the beginning of the session, one of the most controversial bills early on was that voter ID legislation that was passed. Have we seen the end of that one?
Well, it still has to be approved, I think, by the Justice Department for voting rights compliance. You've still got that lawsuit hanging out there in federal court that's challenging it, so maybe it will go into effect this year, maybe it won't. It's hard to say right now, but if it is finally approved by all hands concerned and it goes into effect, it may have the effect of energizing some voters that may not have gotten involved in the political process at all except for that law.
Tom, as always, we thank you for your input and your perspective. We truly do rely on it throughout the session. We just want to thank you for all the help you've given us this year.
Well, it's been great, Gerald, and I've enjoyed doing it with you guys.
In other capital news, the U.S. Department of Agriculture believes the avian flu could reach America's west coast as early as this year. That news is motivating Tommy Irvin to seek another term as Agriculture Commissioner of Georgia. He says the threat of bird flu requires the full attention of the Department of Agriculture and that plans are already being developed.
To that, we think we're in as good a shape as any state could be, but we got a long ways to go to make sure we have the full protection that I'd like to see us have. I promise you that if it shows up in Georgia, we will not hesitate one moment to immediately quarantine the area, seek funding and authorization for depopulation of the birds, proper disposal of those, to make sure it does not be allowed to spread. We have that commitment. We will keep that commitment.
Poultry is the largest agricultural industry in Georgia. In fact, if Georgia were a country, it would be the fourth largest producer in the world. If avian flu makes its way into Georgia's poultry population, farmers could lose an estimated $2 billion in sales.
Well, this is the last program for the Lawmakers broadcast this year, so we thought our viewers would like to see a glimpse of exactly how we bring the show to you every day of the session. Here's a tour behind the scenes and beyond the camera.
Is it copyrighted? Is it CG2? Are we going to dissolve that?
Take it out. Just take the content.
Take it out?
I mean, not yet.
Yeah, change.
We'll do a dissolve too.
Stand by.
You can't do the show without the people that you don't see on screen. The value of people like Ashley and David and Clem McIntosh and Daryl Watley, our lighting director, and Hampton Kicklighter. I know I'm going to leave somebody out, but they really make the show.
This group of people is most interested in the bottom line, which is what goes on the air at 7 o'clock, and how can we best get to that goal. And so it's not about what your assigned role is or what your name reads in the credits. Anyone can basically do most of the jobs that are called on here, and we'll do that.
If you look forward to coming to work, then it's not really a job. It's not really a work. Most people have a passion for this. They enjoy doing it, so fun is just a natural offshoot of it.
From the standpoint of the viewer, they get a chance to make their own decisions. It's probably the best source that I've seen for information like this that can help you to make the kind of decisions you need to make as a voter and just as a citizen.
Good job, Wendy. Every year here at Lawmakers, we hire a group of interns who are vital to the production of our program. They're asked to write, report, produce, run camera, and operate behind-the-scenes technical equipment. But getting the internship is not easy, as Donald Trump reports. Only one can claim the title of the ultimate Lawmakers intern.
There were millions of bright college students who could have applied. However, 64 actually did. But our staff narrowed it down to 7. 7 of the country's elite college students vying for the greatest internship in the history of the world. Who will be the next Lawmakers intern? Sammy Jones is a technical genius whose brilliance we recognized instantly. However, Sammy never left this dark room the entire 3 months. Young Craig Whitley became the master of covering high school and middle school bands. His work was huge to our program. However, his infatuation with the French horn cost him valuable minutes where he could have been learning. Letitia Jeter.
My name is Letitia.
Sorry, never failed to assist grizzled veteran cameraman Wes Nichols. However, she did fail miserably when asked to uncover the truth behind Buddy McNutty's attempt to import foreign-grown peanuts. Katie Eubanks shined this year as a reporter. Her Capitol coverage was a huge asset to our program. However, Katie was smart, almost too smart, and that's a threat to us all, so she may have to be fired. Matt Rasnick is an accomplished movie director and actor, but decided to give Lawmakers a shot. Matt's execution was flawless. Watch this.
There you go.
Take it. Alongside Matt in the control room was Lauren Brown. Even though Brown wanted to work in radio, her television presence was too powerful for the lens to ignore. Lauren and Matt, though working together here to make Lawmakers the greatest show ever, are actually arch rivals. J.R. Charles rounds off our group of 7 interns. J.R. can write with the best of them, report with the best of them. However, he could not stop asking our cameramen, who's shooting J.R.? It's been 40 legislative days, so the time has come for the boss to hire or fire this year's applicants.
Well, actually, you've all done a great job, but this is public television and we have no money, so you're all fired, including you, Letitia.
Isn't the session over anyway, GB?
Did you say something, Gerald?
I'm running for lieutenant governor anyway. That's all right. I've got a job offer from the Naked News.
For the millionth time, my name is Letitia.
I don't even work here.
Actually, there is one intern that really seemed to fit in. Inky, you're hired.
Yes.
Climbing up on Salisbury Hill.
Congratulations to all of our interns. You were spectacular.
Why don't I remember Inky? Just so we don't get sued, the voiceover was not actually Donald Trump. It was just a dead-on impersonation. Thanks again to our group of 7 guys. We couldn't have done the show without you.
As always, our celebrity voices are impersonated badly.
Sometimes very badly. In addition to the interns, we would like to give our heartfelt thanks to the staff and crew of Lawmakers. You guys are the absolute best. We couldn't do it without you. We appreciate not only the good times, but the hard work you put in on the program. And in Wandy, as always, you're the best. It's always fun working with you.
And we're going to actually, it's going to be kind of a melancholy, a bittersweet thing now. So we have to pack it up for a few months and then get back together again when the legislature reconvenes again.
On to other assignments.
That's right, that's right. So it has actually been a fantastic year, and of course, always a pleasure to work with you as well, Gerald.
Thanks, and
If you have missed any part of this broadcast, be sure to tune in on Monday morning when Lawmakers repeats at 5:30 a.m. That's our broadcast, the final broadcast for the 2006 session of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm in Wandy Lawson.
And I'm Gerald Bryant. Stay tuned now for Rick Steves' Europe Classics. That's coming up next here on Georgia Public Broadcasting. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next January.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.